Somebody would be silly enough. I never saw him spelled. Sitting right here.
None of us, the city council, we have, because we received. So there was an informational meeting like this on Monday, but no voting, it was just to review the article.
That's from the check-out box. The check-out box.
I watched the research meeting when we discussed this and printed out the materials related. I'm going to be as whatever that is. Yeah. Yeah, good.
No, it's here.
Oh, way more than that. Like I've had Vermont town meetings, so it's like first.
No.
They're pretty nice. I mean, they're like I don't know. It's like but it is.
You need like TPS notes coming down from the
Yeah.
sky, right?
Yeah.
It'll be 5 degrees outside.
Like, a lot of town, it's like last switch. It used to be Tuesday. We didn't have school going on Tuesdays because it was now two other towns continuing their February break in college town. But a lot of towns have moved away from doing the town meeting on Tuesday. Like most towns it's Saturday, ours is Tuesday. So it's like yeah, that was I honestly haven't made it to one since it moved to Saturday because Saturday is that's the day when you're bringing your kids with you.
I think there's no protocol.
Yeah, it's like
You know, say you mess it
10
up.
to 1. Yeah.
It does need.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're never gonna capture everything, but I think the risk is
Yeah, light in the sky. And next week,
population like missing.
One thing on this side. Floating balls. Not sure.
Yeah, it was like 2 days of it hit at 4:30 on the select. Because I was totally going fine all day, just working from home. I was like, oh, I totally got this. I know, so I'll be fine. And at 4:30. I'll just take a nap. So I took a nap for 2 hours.
And you woke up 14
And I
hours
woke up
later.
and I was like, oh, wait, I can't show my face on the screen right now. This is awful.
I was supposed to be late, and then I realized when Bethany texted me, said you weren't letting me know, so I knew because we were fairly close, and I went, I better get there early because I should come back.
Yeah,
And then we missed. I missed.
I'm terrified of that. I know I'm within a foot and a half
It
of
was
this.
in that packet of stuff, the bishop.
It was late though. We added it to our meeting, and so when they put out the select board agenda, I totally missed that it wasn't on there because it wasn't.
I flipped through it in the packet, but it wasn't on the list, so I just flipped right over it. And when I saw it in the next meeting, I went, oh,
No, I that was my fault.
No problem. Good to see you. Yeah, I gotta do the water things tonight. So
You are, okay, I was wondering. Okay, good.
that's my baby.
There you go.
Not really, but.
No, it is. I want to feel passion.
Yeah, anything to do. So, for sure. Thank you for being here. Thank you.
That's not you. You can stand in the back. Wave to just thumbs up.
Yeah, no, I got it. Put in, today.
Right? It's true, like,
Yeah, that's it.
He sat downstairs.
Put some stuff up. Right there. As long as it doesn't get rusty. Yeah. I'll wait till the weather.
The legal voters of the town of Middlebury and the town of Addison, the state of Vermont, are hereby warned and notified to meet at the Middlebury Union High School Auditorium at 73 Charles Avenue, Middlebury, on Monday, March 6, 2023 at 7 p.m. to act on Articles 1 through 7 and to discuss Articles 8 through 10, and on Tuesday, March 7, 2023 from 7 a.m. through 7 p.m. at the Recreation Center, 154 Creek Road, Middlebury, to vote by Australian ballot on Articles 8 through 10, as provided by the Middlebury Town Charter. With respect to Article 8, the legal voters of the town of Middlebury are further notified that an informational meeting will be held on Monday, March 6, 2023 at 7:30 p.m. at the Middlebury Union High School Auditorium for the purpose of reviewing the proposal for issuing a bond for the construction of a water tank for its public drinking water system. Information on the bond proposal will be presented under Article 7 of the annual town meeting warning. It's really nice to be here again with all of you. Just going to get that out right now. Article 1, to act upon the reports of the town officers. I'd like to introduce your select board, Chairman Brian Carpenter, Vice Chairwoman Lindsay Fuentes Jones, members Heather Seeley, Farhad Khan, Dan Brown, Andy Hooper, and Isabel Goldie, as well as town manager Kathleen Ramsey. I'd like to ask permission for a few members of the town administration who are not residents to speak this evening. Town manager Kathleen Ramsey, library director Dana Hart, and director of public works planning Emily Sherrington. Is there any objection to these non-Middlebury residents speaking this evening?
On there, it says the fire chief is also a non-resident, is that true?
It sounds like it is. Is the fire chief here as well? Hi, David. So I would like to add him as well. Is there an objection to speaking this evening? Hearing no objection. All motions, remarks, and questions should be addressed to myself as Madam Moderator this evening. After I recognize you to speak, please state your name for the record and speak clearly into the microphone so we can all hear you. There are 2 handheld mics that are being delivered by runners, so if I call on you, they will be coming up shortly with the microphone. So I'd like now to call up Chairman Brian Carpenter to give a brief review of 2022.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Good evening, everyone. It's a little sparse out here.
Speak
up here.
Turn it up.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Who's controlling the sound? Can we turn it up? Testing, can you hear me better now?
You gotta talk right into it.
Testing, can you hear me better now?
Yeah.
Get used to the mic. So, welcome and good evening. It's a little disappointing not to see a little better turnout, but maybe we need to get something really contentious on the ballot. We want to get everybody out here. Want to review 2022 with everybody. First, we start with new vitality. After 2 years of lockdowns, limits on the size of gatherings, and social distancing due to the COVID-19 pandemic, it is heart-lifting and energizing to see Middlebury residents and visitors celebrate the outdoors and community at one of the many events held in downtown throughout the year, including the traditional favorites, the Memorial Day Parade, the Festival on the Green, Very Merry Middlebury, and midnight strolls. And our new offerings, the weekly Middlebury Market of craft and food vendors in Triangle Park, and an antique car show on Main Street and Merchants Row on a glorious fall day. An event that drew exhibitors and attendees from hundreds of miles away. Additionally, throughout the year in the milder months, people of all ages can be seen enjoying a seat by the fountain in the newly expanded Triangle Park at the corner of Main Street and Merchants Row, or working their way through the labyrinth on Lazarus Park, as shown on the cover of this year's town report, also lending new vitality to our downtown. In late July 2022, daily passenger rail service from Vermont to New York City resumed with Amtrak's Ethan Allen Express, with a stop in Middlebury at the new passenger rail platform on Middle Seymour Street. This long anticipated option for travel has been well received and appreciated. We had another productive year. The town of Middlebury made significant progress on several major initiatives. First, the town's zoning bylaws were updated to permit greater residential housing densities and expanded mixed-use areas. Once the zoning bylaws were updated, our town planning staff applied for, and we recently received, the state's neighborhood development area designation, which provides access to permitting and funding incentives for development of workforce housing, a real critical need for our community. New water lines were installed on Washington Street. Colonial Drive off of Washington Street extension was reconstructed, including new water, wastewater, and stormwater utility components. And Katy Road was paved, completing a multi-year road improvement project that included the replacement of 2 large culverts. The board's attention was also drawn to quality of life issues raised by the community, and spent considerable time participating in the long-term master planning process for the Middlebury Airport, as well as soliciting input on and updating the noise ordinance in response to citizens' input. Looking ahead to 2023, some projects that we will be undertaking. South Street water line improvements from Porterfield Road to South Main Street. Sanitary sewer and stormwater improvements. And then the long anticipated final paving of the road will take place in 2024. God forbid that nothing bad happens on this project, because it's been a long project. And I know that South Street residents, if there are any of you here in attendance, will appreciate having that behind you. Holiday Road pump station improvements. Also working with library trustees to develop preliminary plans and cost estimates for the rehabilitation and expansion of the Ilsley Public Library. And if you came towards the end as you were rushing in here, on your way out, there is a display that the IPL 100 team has put up that will help you understand the process that they're going through. We'll be doing some more planning for wastewater treatment facility improvements, making significant upgrades in the police department storage building to improve ventilation and air quality for the staff fitness facility, and also supporting efforts by the private sector and nonprofit groups to address housing and childcare shortages. Our FY24 budget, after careful and thorough deliberation, the board adopted a fiscal year 2024, that's July of this year through June 30th of next year, budget that reflects both inflationary pressures, which have been extreme, and the town's continued commitment to a robust capital improvement plan and an efficient vehicle and equipment maintenance and replacement plan, while preserving the current level of town services. With the approval of the transfer of funds from the Cross Street Bridge Reserve Fund under Article 3 this evening, the estimated FY24 municipal general fund tax rate would be 84 and 3/4 cents per $100 of assessed valuation, an increase of 4.5 cents from the FY23 municipal general fund tax rate of 80 and 1/4 cents per 100. This is an increase of 5.6%, which is below the current rate of inflation. As always, I thank my fellow select board members for their hard work and diligence throughout the year. They put in a lot of time and are very thorough and deliberative in considering matters that come before the select board. I think the town is very well served and lucky to have such a quality select board. Lindsay Fuentes George, who has served as the assistant chair, Heather Seeley, Farhad Khan, Dan Brown, Andy Hooper, and Isabel Gogardi for their hard work and extraordinary commitment to our community.
Thank you, Brian. I'd like to call up Select Board Member Farhad Khan to the dedication of the town report.
Just want to mention that you can find the annual report on the town's website under the or the 2023 town meeting tab, and the FY24 budget is also there under the for residents tab.
Thank you, Madam
Moderator. Hello, everyone. Dan Warner began as Middlebury's Director of Public Works Operations in the summer of 1999, coming here from his job as Superintendent of Public Works in Shanahan, Illinois. His duties were many in the beginning, having to oversee not only the day-to-day operation of the wastewater, and highway departments, but also planning and organizing the many capital infrastructure projects. In 2016, the position of Director of Public Works was divided into two positions, Director of Planning and Director of Operations. Dan became DPW Planning Director, which enabled him to begin devoting his full attention to capital planning, scheduling, and day-to-day oversight of Middlebury's critical infrastructure projects. Dan was also able to secure multiple major funding grants for many of the largest projects, which helped reduce the impact of the town's taxpayers and water sewer users. When you think of all the major projects in the town over the last 20 years, Dan played a key part in most of them. Most recently, he oversaw the town's portion of the downtown railroad project, the Court Street and Washington Street water line replacement, Colonial Drive upgrades, the East Middlebury flood resiliency project, and of course, the reconstruction of the miles of sidewalks and paving of miles of many roads. The town of Middlebury wishes Dan all the best in his retirement. He now has time to enjoy his many hobbies, which includes restoring vintage cars, teaching and playing the bagpipes, and traveling around Vermont with his wife Cindy looking for the best creamies. Thank you.
Thank you, Farhad. I'd like to call up Select Board Member Isabel Gogarty to thank several people for their service to Middlebury.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Today, I have the honor of recognizing 5 individuals in our community who have dedicated so much service to our community. And the first one is going to be Esther Charleston. Esther Charleston was and will continue and is always an advocate for housing and for people who traditionally don't see themselves in local office. I saw myself sitting in Esther's seat when she was serving on the select board. She encouraged me to be more inclusive and be more involved in local office. And she continues to this day to advocate at our middle school for justice and for equity. And I can't thank her enough for the road that she paved for young people to be involved in local office. So, Esther, thank you. The next person that I'm going to honor tonight is Bill Malloy. Bill Malloy gave 28 years of service to our town. So Bill Malloy joined the wastewater department in July of 1994 and worked as a plant operator and also performed required water sampling testing in the lab. Anyone who knows Bill knows that he's a good-natured soul who almost always has a smile on his face. Bill retired in April of 2022, and now you will most likely see him playing 18 holes of golf or riding with his wife Penny on their trike, a 3-wheeled motorcycle. So, Bill Malloy. Next is Jackie Sullivan. Jackie Sullivan served our town for 20 years. Jackie began working as an assistant town clerk in July of 2022. In January of 2023, she moved into the position of accounting services manager. And in 2005, Jackie was elected to town treasurer and combined those duties with her accounting duties. Jackie retired in July of 2022, and she and her husband Tom are enjoying their newly constructed home on Lake Dunmore. Cheers to Jackie. Next is Chris English. He gave our town 9 years of dedicated service. Chris was hired in April of 2013 as an administrative coordinator in the town manager's office, following a 2-decade career with AT&T in New Jersey. And he was promoted to assistant town manager in July the following year. In addition to providing day-to-day operational policy and strategic planning support to Kathleen Ramsey, Chris also managed the town website and the email community news platform. So when you log onto the website and you see all of the information that's provided to you for our meetings, our information packets, our agenda, our notes, and the meeting highlights, Chris was the one behind all of that work. You can now see that Chris retired in October of 2022, and he is looking forward to exploring more of New England with his wife, Susan, who retired from the Mount Abraham Unified School District last July. Thank you, Chris. Next, I have the honor of presenting the Robert E. Collins Award on behalf of the Parks and Recreation Department to community member Carrie Sinks. Carrie Sinks has been selected as a recipient of the 2022 Robert E. Collins Award. The award has been presented annually since 1974 and recognizes individuals that go above and beyond in our community and exhibit extraordinary commitment and dedication to the Parks and Recreation Department. Carrie has dedicated her life to improving the health, wellness, and fitness of community members of all ages here in Middlebury. She has certainly made this a better place to live because of her efforts. Carrie coaches soccer and basketball for our departments and puts in a lot of time behind the scenes, coordinating, planning practices, and making sure that everything runs smoothly. Her ability to connect and motivate young people is truly a gift, and she makes every child feel included and heard. Carrie has also coached a kids obstacle course racing for us in the past, and now has a course at her home, which she continues to offer this amazing program to children that are interested. The Parks and Recreation Department approached Carrie in the fall and stated a desire to offer more programming for adults. And within a week, she pulled together Pilates and a senior movement class that have proven to be extremely popular this past winter. This just highlights the type of person Carrie is, and she is willing to try anything as long as it will have a positive impact on our community. She has proven herself to be an invaluable member of our department, and we are so honored to present this award to her. Carrie and her husband, Bill, live in Weybridge with their 3 kids, Alex, Allie, and April. In her free time, she enjoys competing in endurance races and is currently nationally ranked in her age group. Congratulations, Carrie, on this well-deserved honor, and thank you for all you do.
Thank you, Isabel. Is there a motion to accept the reports of the town officers? Moved by Heather Seeley, seconded by Farhad Khan. All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? You have accepted the reports. Article 2. Shall the voters of the town of Middlebury vote to adopt the proposed budget for the fiscal year 2024, July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2024 in the amount of $12,921,448, with a portion thereof in the amount of $8,553,380 to be raised by taxes, and $809,308 to be allocated from an annual local option tax receipts in excess of debt and maintenance requirements of the Cross Street Bridge to offset spending for capital improvements. What's your pleasure regarding Article 2? Is there a motion? What's your name for the record? Jeremy Rathburn makes the motion. Is there a second? Nick Ardum makes a second. I'd like to invite Kathleen Ramsey up to make a presentation before we get to discussion. Oh, and she's already there.
Good evening. Great to see you this evening. As Brian mentioned, after a careful deliberation, the select board adopted a fiscal year. Can you hear me now? Okay, thank you. I don't know how we're going to do this. I've got the slide advancer, this in my other hand. Okay. No, thanks. That would be more confusing. Okay, so anyway, the proposed budget is a 4.5% increase, or 5.6%, if Article 3, which is the transfer of funds from the Cross Street Bridge Fund, is approved. This is the breakdown of your general fund tax rate. We have the amount needed to support the budget. We have the transfer of funds from Article 3, which would take 2.3 cents off your tax rate, voted exemptions for veterans, and the fire equipment fund for 2 cents. The proposed budget reflects both inflationary pressures and the town's continued commitment to a robust capital improvement plan and an efficient vehicle and equipment maintenance and replacement plan while preserving the current level of town services. The proposed FY24 budget and other articles presented for voter consideration at this year's town meeting incorporate input the board has received over the years, specifically draw on reserves to minimize increases in the tax rate, use local option revenue in excess of what is needed for the Cross Street Bridge Fund debt to fund infrastructure improvements, and use the Cross Street Bridge Fund reserve to fund capital improvements, reduce amounts borrowed and or interest expense, and leverage grant and other funding. Your major drivers in this year's budget are wages. Oops. Wages, 326,500. Employee benefits, 179,100. Equipment maintenance, 49,000. Equipment purchases, 21,400. Equipment fuel, 23,000. The PD adaptive reuse bond, 124,416, and capital improvements, $92,870. Your budget offsets are things that will offset those major increases in expenses are administrative charges for the water fund. Those are administrative charges that for accounting and administrative personnel for the water fund, which is separate from the general fund. 17,600 for the wastewater fund transfers. A big increase, like everyone else, we are experiencing greater returns on our interest on funds on deposit, which was previously basically nothing. So $115,000 on the general fund balance and a $75,000 increase for the Cross Street Bridge Fund interest. And as your board has also proposed the transfer of $228,496 from the Cross Street Bridge Fund for PD debt service and the increase in capital improvements, which Lindsay Fuentes George will be addressing under Article 3. So here's the breakdown of where our revenues come from. 65% or so from property taxes, gifts and payments from the college, the local option tax, state and federal revenue, the interfund transfers, which I mentioned, and charges for services and other, our recreation programs, town clerk fees, library charges. Oops, that didn't work out so well. So here's your breakdown of where your money goes. This slide incorporates all of the both the operational expenses shown in your line item budget and the benefit expenses and capital expenses broken down by department. So that's your complete expense for Public Works, 3.6 million, Police Department, 2.8 million, Libraries, 2.2, Recreation and Parks at 780. And these other ones that you cannot read are Health and Human Services for 213,132, administrative and miscellaneous and community programs at 1.7 million, debt service at just over 1 million, and Cross Street Bridge debt service at $890,000. Okay, sure. Okay, sorry about that. Oh, here we have another slide that was is garbled. So our capital improvement budget, Public Works is the big driver here, 1.2 million. The police department is 43,000. General government and new initiatives is 51,000. Libraries 180,000. Parks 75,000 and fire department 76,614. In addition to funding for road, sidewalk, stormwater, parks and recreation infrastructure, and public works, fire, police, recreation, library, and town office buildings, equipment, and technology, the FY24 capital budget includes funding for schematic schematic design costs and fundraising consultant fees for the Ilsley Library renovation expansion project, $163,000, and matching funds seed money for the proposed skate park and pump track facilities, $5,000 and $10,000 respectively. So just to go over the local option tax receipts, you see that we fared well through the pandemic, holding at just over $1 million during that time. In FY22, $1,271,000, our highest year ever in local option tax receipts. We just received the most recent quarter report, and we are on track in FY23 to exceed that amount again. Um, Knowing that there is some economic uncertainty and continued threat of recession, the board chose to estimate local option tax at 1.1 million, a conservative estimate for budgeting purposes. So just to go over the Cross Street Bridge Fund debt. So we have $600,000 coming in for the college each year to pay that bond off, leaving $290,692 to be coming from the local option tax. So as I mentioned before, we budgeted 1.1 million for the local option tax revenue. Your $290,692 to go towards the debt, leaving the $809,308, which is shown on your warning to go towards capital improvements expenditures. So right now, the Cross Street Bridge Fund Reserve that you'll be asked under several articles to use this year. The proposed balance is $3 million currently, or FY21 audited balance, $3 million. Article 3, the 228,496. Article 4 for purchase of the Maverick gas station for the realignment of Court, Charles, and Monroe intersection, 295,000, and use up to $1 million to leverage other funds and reduce the amounts bonded for the new water storage tank. Several years ago, the board instituted a policy of featuring several of our many social service agencies and regional agencies each year. Each year, they invite three of these agencies in to meet with the board and update this on the board on their activities. I'm just going to give you a couple of highlights of each of these agencies. The ACEDC, Economic Development Corporation, Addison County Economic Development Corporation, is dedicated to helping Addison County businesses from all backgrounds, at all stages, in all sectors, and size to grow and create good paying jobs by offering services to individual businesses, assist groups of businesses, and working with business associations. ACEDC's FY24 request of $7,000 is the same as it has been for at least the last 10 years. Middlebury Community Television, a nonprofit interactive community-based alternative to broadcast and commercial TV and public TV, which covers local meetings and events as they are this evening, offers residents free equipment and training to produce their own programs, and provides free cable television channel time and an internet platform to exhibit programs. MCTV's FY24 request is $5,000, the same as it has been for the last 17 years. Tri-Valley Transit, formerly the Addison County Transit Resources, connects the people and places of Addison, Orange, and northern Windsor counties of Vermont within our network of community transportation alternatives. Provided 158,302 rides last year, and of those, 51,449 originated in Middlebury. 80% of their funding is from federal grants requiring a 20% local match, and less than 5% of their funding comes from municipal appropriations. Tri-Valley Transit's FY24 request is $26,908, the same as it has been for the last 8 years. Looking ahead, while the Select Board has presented a budget requiring only a modest increase in the property tax rate again this year, keep in mind that increases in the following expenses: wages, employee benefits, replacement of vehicles and equipment, unfunded mandates, and continued uncertainty about inflation and the economy and the future of state and federal funding, as well as dwindling reserves and fund balance, will put significant upward pressure on budgets in FY25 and beyond. Questions? We have our department heads available to answer questions about the budget. Public Works Director of Operations, Bill Kernan. Capital Improvements Director of Public Works Planning, Emily Sherrington. Public Safety, Police Chief Tom Hanley, and Fire Chief David Shaw. Libraries, Library Director Dana Hart. Parks and Recreation Superintendent Dustin Hunt, and me for General Government and Revenues. Okay.
So we have a hand up here in the black. Wait for the microphone, please, and state your name in the microphone.
Okay. So the Cross Street Bridge Fund was bonded in 2010
for a 30-year term. In the back, in the plaid shirt.
Hi, Dave Silverman. I'm wondering about the transfer of 200,000 or so for capital expenses. I assume that's in the budget as well. I don't want to speak about question 3. I want to speak about the part of it that's in the budget. What is that money being used for exactly? There was a transfer for the police department reuse project, and if I recall correctly, several years ago before pandemic, we approved the transfer of money from the Cross Street Bridge Fund to repurpose a former water treatment plant. I believe, to use primarily as storage and parking for the police department, and now we're asked for another $200-something thousand for that. So, Tom can maybe speak to what that money is being needed for.
Dave, so right before the pandemic, the last meeting in March 2020, before the pandemic, the voters approved a bond for the PD reuse project, which is exactly
as you put it, for storage and for a garage improvements. This is to fund that bond. So we borrowed the money and now we have to pay it back. And we borrowed it from the municipal bond bank. And in order to pay it back over a shorter term, we've proposed taking it from the funding the difference in order to shorten the term from a 20-year term to a 7-year term. We've proposed taking it from the Cross Street Bridge Fund, as we told the voters we were going to in 2020.
Wait, you need the microphone.
Yes, it saves us money. It saves us about $170,000 in interest over the 20-year life of the bond.
Okay. Sorry, Chief. Any other discussion or questions? In the back, hand up.
see an interesting item on line 302. It says special project town archives. How fun. Can you tell us more about that? Sure. I don't know about the fun part, but
When we moved out of the old town offices, we had quite a collection of old records and no place to put them in the new town offices. So they've been traveling around the town of Middlebury in garages, in the like. And what we'd like to do is tackle the project of putting those, storing them electronically, weeding them out. There are a lot of redundant files, and minimize those in hopes that after the project, we'll be able to store them at the new town offices. Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions? I have a hand up here in the middle. Your name first? There you go. There you go. Thank you.
Is somebody going to explain the purpose of this water tower?
Yes.
Why we need one?
Yes.
So I'm out of turn, I'll wait for that.
Thank you.
At the Monroe Street, Charles Street realignment.
That was good. So the question is about a roundabout at Port Monroe and Charles. So we have hired VHB,
who did a preliminary study indicating that the most improvement for traffic would be to realign the intersection with a 4-way stop, so that the intersection is from Charles Street right across to Monroe Street, instead of staggered the way it is currently. They did analyze a roundabout and ranked that after the 4-way intersection. Emily, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Wait for the mic, please, and state your name for the record. Yeah.
You have to get very close. Emily Sherrington? There we go.
Okay, so one of the complications with the roundabout is to allow for pedestrian and bicycle traffic safely to get around the intersection would be really complicated with the roundabout and knowing the number of commuters using those other modes to get to the schools, it would be really close.
Can everybody hear her? No.
No?
No, you really have to get on
It's a
top of that
working-
microphone.
Maybe it's the microphone. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you really have to get close to
Maybe
it.
it's straighter.
There you go.
So one of the major concerns with using a roundabout in that intersection is that given the amount of bike and pedestrian traffic there to get to school, it would make it really hard for safety concerns using a roundabout. So that's why they went with the four-way cross intersection.
Okay, there's a hand in blue in the back.
Hi, I'm Meg Baker, and I actually, we may be discussing this later, but I'm thinking specifically about that change to the Court Street Monroe shift, thinking about the pedestrian safety. The number of kids coming through Rudolph Acres at that time, as the elementary school releases the fact that there's only one sidewalk on Monroe Street, and parts of it don't have any sidewalks. I'm wondering about sidewalk and traffic calming measures as a part of that study.
So while it's tempting, I don't think we're gonna design the intersection tonight, and we have many.
And lots of public input coming before we get to a point where we're going to be constructing something.
Any other questions or discussions on Article 2? There's a hand over here.
Chief's salary is.
Probably one of our most underpaid civil servants for the amount of responsibility he has. Off the top of my head, it's just over $100,000.
Any other questions or discussion? I see a hand over here. Go ahead.
Salting. And I see that on line 776, 778, 778, that we are budgeting $160,000 for salting. And we know that the price of salt is going up, and I'm just wondering if, I know this is a hot issue, whether we could consider more modest use of salt rather than an increase in budgeting for salt of our sidewalks.
Any comment to that? Bill, do you have anything to add? Behind you.
I'm not sure
State your name, please.
No, Bill Kernan, Director of Operations. Not exactly sure, Laura, what your question was. Was it an alternate product to use for that money, or?
Well, in FY '22, we spent $130,000, but we're budgeting $160,000 for FY '24. So we're budgeting up $20,000.
Yeah, so that's not necessarily more salt. We've seen across the board increases in all kinds of commodities, products, parts, contractual services.
Did that answer your question, Lauren?
Well, I think that I'm hoping that we could be more modest in our use of salt. That's what I'm hoping. I think it's duly noted. Thank you, Laura. I see a hand in the back corner. Give her a minute, she's almost there.
Hello, Lindsay Escar. How many school resource officers are employed? I see the budget, $93,400. And there was just a question about the chief of police, and the answer was making around, just over 100,000. Is that two, or how is that budgeted?
That is one officer with all the benefits included in that.
Okay. Anything else? Are you ready for the question? The question is, the motion is on adopting Article 2 as warned. I heard something. No? Okay. All in favor of adopting Article 2, please say aye. Any opposed? Article 2 is adopted. Thank you. Article 3. Shall the voters of the town of Middlebury vote pursuant to 24 VSA 2408A to authorize the select board to apply up to $228,496 from the Cross Street Bridge Reserve Fund to offset increased capital improvement expenses of $92,860 and PD adaptive reuse building debt service expense of $135,636. And I'm calling up Lindsay Fuentes George to tell us all about it.
Can you hear me okay?
You have to get really close.
I have to be louder. Now you can hear me. Okay, hello. I'm going to go over what Kathleen just went over 5 minutes ago. So if you didn't catch it the first time, here we go. This is Article 3, the transfer of Cross Street Bridge Reserve Funds. In order to offset the FY24 budget increase and reduce the impact on the tax rate, under Article 3 of the town meeting warning, the Select Board has proposed applying $228,496 from the Cross Street Bridge Reserve Fund to cover the debt service payment on the Police Department Adaptive Reuse Bond, as contemplated when the bond vote was presented to voters in 2020, and to cover the increase in capital spending for fiscal year 24. The transfer will offset debt service on the Police Department Adaptive Reuse Project of $135,636 as planned when the town bonded for the project for 7 years rather than 20 years. The shorter 7-year term for the bond will save the town an estimated $179,000 in interest expense versus a 20-year bond. The transfer will also offset increased capital improvement spending of $92,860 in fiscal year 24 for time-sensitive projects, including one-time expenses for schematic design costs and fundraising consultant fees for the Ilsley Library renovation expansion project. If approved, the transfer from the Cross Street Bridge Reserve Fund will shave 2.3 cents off the tax rate estimated for fiscal year 24. That was it.
All right, well, I got all excited and forgot to ask for a motion and a second first. So let's go back up a little bit and ask for that first. Is there a motion for Article 3? Heather Seeley, thank you. Farhad again. Got a little tag team going there. Thank you. Now it's time for discussion and questions. Question here in the front. Microphone's on its way. Don't forget your name.
Regarding the money for the library project.
having my past history as an engineer and knowing how the design projects go, does that design fee include a good contingency for the schematic design phase in case stuff comes up so that we won't be cut short on funds?
Dana, do you want to cover that?
That doesn't have anything to do with this article?
I thought the first part was the increased capital improvement spending in 92,860 schematic design costs and fundraising consultant fee for deals in the library. That's the part I was
Just
asking
making
about.
sure.
Am I wrong?
No, you are correct in that expenditure was proved as part of the general fund budget. The total budget for the library improvements, the schematic design and fundraising is $163,000. This is simply the increase in the capital budget for this year.
Okay, thank you. That answers the question. Thank you very much.
Any other questions or discussion? Right here.
Thank you. Madam Moderator, last comment. It says that there are one-time expenses, including the library. What are the other time-sensitive projects that are being covered with these funds?
And your name for the record, sir? Your name?
Ross Conrad?
Well, in addition to the library, we have all of our usual projects, the sidewalk updates, the paving, the gravel road maintenance, all things that are time sensitive to continue.
Looking for more hands? Hand in the center here.
Max Krause, would you remind us what the PD adaptive reuse project is, please?
Sure, that was a project to reuse the old wastewater treatment plant for storage and vehicle storage for the police department. So, for example, if one of the bigger vehicles needs to be cleaned, it can go in a bay.
Can't quite hear.
Speak louder.
I'm saying that if, for example, one of the bigger vehicles needs to go in a bay and be cleaned after an accident, it gives an enclosed space in which to do that. And it also gives storage for the town's cruisers so that they don't have to idle outside. It keeps them warmer in the winter.
Any other questions or comments? Are you ready for the question? Saw hands sort of go up, no? Okay. So the motion is on adopting Article 3 as warned. All in favor of adopting Article 3 as warned, please say aye. Any opposed? You have adopted Article 3. Moving on to Article 4, shall the voters of the town of Middlebury vote pursuant to 24 VSA 2408A to authorize the select board to apply up to $295,000 from the Cross Street Bridge Reserve Fund for the purpose of the former Maverick gas station at 82 Court Street for the purpose of reconfiguring the intersection of Court Street, Monroe Street, and Charles Avenue. What's your pleasure regarding Article 4? Wait, we need a microphone just so everyone can hear. Are you making the motion to adopt? Thank you. Chip Malcolm. Thank you. Is there a second? Second. I see over here Barry Baker seconding. Am I correct? Okay, thank you. I'm going to call up Brian Carpenter to discuss and present to you Article 4.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I don't suppose anybody's ever had a little traffic jam on Court Street. I guess it's just me. The traffic planners and engineers tell us that the main issue that we have to address first is the congestion that is created by that very awkward intersection coming out of the high school where it's not a direct across and right there by the Maverick gas station. So as a step towards reconfiguration of Court Street, Monroe Street, Charles Avenue intersection, the select board secured a purchase and sale agreement on the Maverick gas station, which is our Article 4 we're taking up right now. Our board proposes the use of $295,000 from the Cross Street Bridge Reserve Fund to purchase the property. This is required for realignment of that intersection to create a single four-way intersection that would replace the current staggered two intersection arrangement. The proposed purchase is the town's assessed value of the property. As we await voter consideration of the purchase, the town is conducting its due diligence on the property, and with assistance from the Addison County Regional Planning Commission, has applied to enroll the property in the state's Brownfields Assessment and Cleanup Program. Using funding from the Cross Street Bridge Fund to purchase the property allows us to avoid the cost of issuing a bond and interest expense while project plans are finalized and funding for the intersection realignment is secured. If the town purchases the property, FY24 capital improvement funds are being set aside to maintain it and to make minor cosmetic improvements to spruce up the appearance of this eyesore sitting at a prominent intersection along the main transportation corridor in our community. While the town awaits for a realignment project to kick off, and I should say some years down in the future. So as Kathleen said, we're not designing it tonight. But we are looking for, we would really appreciate your support because we feel this is a critical opportunity. This is an opportunity for the town to address a critical transportation infrastructure piece that affects the traffic flow on Court Street.
Thank you, Brian. Time for discussion and questions.
Can you get close to the mic, please? Some of you will remember back in the late 90s when we did the middle school and we did the major changes to the high school. At that time, the town wanted to do this. And they came to our school board and said, you need to do this as part of your bond. We said, we can't do it. Number one, the person who owned the gas station did not want to sell. So the only way you could have done this is by eminent domain. In thinking about it, that's 25 years ago, and it's still the way it is. So I would want to move with this project as quick as you could. And the high school was built in 1954, and then obviously development of Butoff Acres and the number of homes back in that area, the traffic coming out of both those roads has been markedly different. But it's now 70 years since the high school was built. And I think it's probably time to realign this road.
Anyone else? I see a hand over behind you, over here in the far end. Ellen Cronin. Will the purchase price be reconsidered based on the findings of the environmental review?
We have an agreed purchase price contract. If there's something in there that we don't feel comfortable with, we will look at it. We may have to back out of it. However, we know it's a brownfield, and the funding to clean that up, the tanks are already out of the ground, and the funding to clean that up is subsidized by a state program that we're enrolling in at this time. So I can't promise you that nothing will be found that
won't be of concern, but I can tell you that we have anticipated that, and that's why we have a purchase price that is just at the assessed value. Chip Malcolm made a point that the property owner did not want to sell this property for a long time. We had looked at buying this property a few years back, and the property owner only wanted to sell it if we bought. There was multiple stations. It was all packaged together, and you had to take on a contract to distribute their fuel for a number of years. And as I'm already fully involved in another business, I didn't feel like pumping gas. And so we could not make it work. The opportunity arose more recently. And so we've been working on this throughout the year. We feel we have a very fair contract. The lawyers have looked at it. There is, we are not assuming all of the risk on this.
In the back, in the plaid?
Thank you. I think it's a great idea and well worth doing. Just a couple of clarifying questions. Brian, what is some years down the road?
We will start working on if the voters approve, we'll be working on the plans, but I think
it would be between planning, permitting, and funding. I think a 5-year plan is probably an aggressive plan just to be real about it, given what we already have in the hopper and the things that we're doing. That's just the realities of how long some of this stuff will take.
Familiar with the brownfield. Sorry, I'm vaguely familiar with that brownfield cleanup insurance program from the state, but do you have a sense of what the town's maximum potential liability that would not be covered by this insurance? For whatever could have happened, leaching into the soils and things like that. Do we have some sort of estimate of what our maximum exposure would be?
So part of my understanding, we're still investigating the brownfields program, but part of my understanding is that once the polluting parties are the ones that are on the hook forever and ever. We would be applying as an innocent purchaser to the program to minimize our exposure.
I saw a hand over here, right here.
It just look. I do know that they tried to assign the risk to us, Dave, and we weren't willing to accept it. Just so you know.
You were saying there's some kind of cosmetic changes that you would attempt with this property in the interim, once it's purchased. Any suggestions as to what that might be? Leveling it? Something?
I think we have a couple of big flower pots left.
So my first inclination was to demolish it, but then I have my records that are making their way around Middlebury, and so that would be a place for them for now.
Anyone else have any questions or comments? There's a hand up in the middle.
It sounds like we've done, can we just go over what's been done today in terms of an assessment? So it sounds like a traffic assessment's been done, and I understand that this is step one to getting this done, and the timing question's been answered for me. But is there any sense of what the overall cost will be to actually aligning those roads and all of the other expenses? Has anything been done there? Thank you.
Less costly.
So when VHB did the conceptual look at the preliminary look at that time, as Brian says, it was 2015, and the cost estimate was about 1.5 million. And we know what's happened with prices since then.
Anyone else? There's a hand here. Get really close.
Emily Charrington. And in terms of the timing for this project, V-Trans has become involved. So the town sort of directed the preliminary study, working with VHB to figure out the best approach to realigning the road. And once the four-way stop and the move to purchase Maverick gas station were addressed by the town, V-Trans took notice of it. So they're very interested in realigning this intersection, and I think the next step is that they're going to become involved in the process, and potentially that will offset some of the costs for the town.
So she said V-Trans is going to be involved, which will help us.
Anyone else? Just one more hand?
Jeremy Rathman. So I just want to make sure that I understand what we're voting on with Article 4 because of the talk of the environmental assessment. So we are approving the purchase of Maverick gas station. That purchase is pending an environmental assessment. So we will know what we're getting into before the town actually pulls the trigger on the purchase, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
The select board will
make a final decision on that, but this would give us the funding to complete the purchase, assuming the select board is comfortable and their attorney advises that everything looks in order.
Anyone else? If not, are you ready for the question? Looks like you are. Okay, so the motion is on adopting Article 4 as warned. All in favor of adopting Article 4, please say aye. Any opposed? You have adopted Article 4. Thank you.
Madam Moderator, may I just address one thing?
Yes.
Chip Malcolm asked a question about the local option tax. And it was pointed out that we bonded for 30 years from 2010, which would take you to 2040. We talked about this a little bit. I don't remember if it was our last in-person town meeting, but it was one of those. And I think the realities are that we need to understand that the local option tax is with us to stay. It has provided us an opportunity to do things like this that have lagged for far too long and allows the greater community to pay a part of that cost and shares it with more of the users. And if you look throughout the state, there's more townships that are recognizing that it is a method for sharing some of the utilization of that infrastructure as opposed to strictly relying upon the local property tax. So I won't be here, and Chip, 40 years from now or 30 years from now, but I think that it's probably safe to assume when we're making decisions now that we're not trying to save to take care of the Cross Street Bridge always and forever in that fund. And that's the assumption that we're going upon as we do our budgeting. We want to make sure there's funds in the Cross Street Bridge Fund to take care of the projected needs of the Cross Street Bridge for the next 10 years or so. But beyond that, we're trying to utilize some of that funds for those things that are important to the town and critical to the town, and so that the money is being used and invested in a timely basis. So That's how we're looking at the Cross Street Bridge Fund.
Thank you, Brian. Moving on to Article 5, shall the voters of the town of Middlebury vote pursuant to 24 VSA 2408A to authorize the select board to apply up to $1 million from the Cross Street Bridge Reserve Fund for the purpose of constructing of a water tank for its public drinking water system. And I was going to invite Heather Seeley up. She's waiting in the wings.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay in the back? Great. Thank you. It's wonderful to see you all here in person this evening. Thank you for being here. In 2017, the town received the results of a hydraulic study of its water system, identifying and prioritizing needed repairs and improvements to the system. In 2022, the first project on the priority list, I got Cross Street on the brain, sorry. The Court Street and Washington Street water line project was completed. The next project on the list is the construction of a 1.5 million gallon concrete tank on Chipman Hill. I'll provide some more additional details on this project as part of Article 8, which is an Australian ballot item on the ballot for tomorrow. For your consideration now on the floor, under Article 5 is the board's proposal to allocate $1 million from the current $3+ million surplus in the Cross Street Bridge Fund to offset a portion of the cost of the water tank project. This is the same strategy the town used to finance the now completed Cross Street and Washington Street project, totaling $3 million. You may recall that voters approved a similar allocation from the Cross Street Bridge Fund in 2020. And this is important, so pay attention, please. However, through the hard work and initiative of the town staff, the town of Middlebury was fortunate to receive $1.36 million in loan forgiveness. That's money we don't have to pay back. $975,000 in no interest financing with a 2% annual administration fee from the Drinking Water State Revolving Loan Fund, and $600,000 funding from the the Northern Borders Regional Commission Grant Program. As a result, we did not need to tap the Cross Street Bridge Fund for the $1 million previously authorized in 2020 by voters to defray the cost of the Court Street and Washington Street projects. So I would just like to recognize at this moment the hard work of our town staff, because that is really huge. So thank you. As I mentioned, we are proposing a similar financing strategy for this water tank project and hoping for a similar outcome. Our proposal is to use $1 million from the Cross Street Bridge Fund to offset the potential bonding for this project. The benefits, they decrease the water rate increases to cover the construction cost and allows the town to continue to address additional priority repairs timely. So why do we suggest using the Cross Street Bridge funds? As Brian mentioned a few minutes ago, a broader payer base helps fund the needed infrastructure for residents, businesses, public services, schools, the hospital, and firefighting. Everyone benefits from the improvements, not just water system users. Reducing the cost of the project by saving interest expense on borrowing. Let me know if I can answer any questions for you.
Discussion and questions. I see. Oh, I did the motion thing again. Dang it. So let's back up one more time. So sorry. I need a motion and a second for this article. So moved from Alan Shashak. Thank you, honey. Looks like Gary Baker's willing to second over there. Thank you, Gary. Okay. Thank you. Now let's have a little discussion and some questions. Name? Thank you.
Has, it doesn't run out of water. I don't keep the reservoir full all the time. I need somebody to explain to me what the need for this water tower is.
So, prior to the 2017
study of the Middlebury water system, the permit that the state provides for our water system identified some deficiencies, mainly in the fire flows and the demand at peak time for water. And prior to 2017, the state had indicated multiple times that we needed to address the issue in the town of Middlebury. And part of the study in 2017 also reiterated the importance of this tank. It's hard to explain without a lot of detail, but the system is required to produce so many gallons per minute for fire flows. So if there were a fire somewhere and a big water draw, the storage on Chipman Hill provides the water needed for that service for firefighting and still keeps all of the users at the pressure in the water that they would normally expect.
And we'll never run out of that water. I don't.
Yes, hopefully, yes.
We won't run out of that water. That's the Middlebury water source that's right off of 116. Will not run out of water.
Right, but we're also pumping out of.
Remind me, Bill, is it 3 wells? Three wells. And we do have pumps that go down occasionally, and we do maintain multiple pumps and service those pumps and keep backups, but we do occasionally have a well down, and this does provide additional storage as well. Emily could probably add more, or Bill.
Just talk really loud, Emily.
Storage every day.
Turn the pumps off. When there's the source is there. It will not run out of water.
The pump is already running about 20 hours a day to provide flow to the storage tank. So it'd be hard to.
To the reservoir.
It's a tank. It's an in-ground tank.
You refer to it.
So it would be hard to increase the amount of pumping off of the Palmer Springs well, because it's already, that's our primary well. The other two are just supplementing to get the tank up to a certain elevation.
Okay.
Okay.
It seems like we're preparing for a very obscure situation.
You need to have the microphone, but you've already spoken several times. Is everyone okay with Charles saying something else? One more time, go ahead. But give him the mic.
No, it's okay.
Well, you said something, but we couldn't hear it. No?
I think he was just repeating what he had said.
Okay, I couldn't hear, so I just wanted to make sure what you were
I
saying,
think
Charles.
we're preparing for. I think we're doing a lot to prepare for a very obscure situation, which I don't see us getting into. I'm not familiar with the study, I'll admit that, but it seems like we're going way for an outlier, spending a lot of money on a tower for a real outlier situation. We looked at our water source here. There's another huge water source right behind it. I don't know, it seems reachy to me.
Thank you. Anyone else? There's a hand over here, and then another one there.
Oh, Ross, I think you had your hand up.
If Ross was first, that's fine.
Oh, it's okay, I'll go after you.
City.
Ross comment. Now I have a couple questions. I've heard this called a tank, and I've heard it called a tower. What exactly is it?
It's a tank. It's an above ground concrete holding tank.
And could you tell me, or us, what is it going to be lined with? We know that over time, especially concrete is known to produce cracks. And I would hate to see us pumping water in to have it slowly leaking out, very inefficient and wasteful, quite frankly. So what is the tank going to be lined with?
Emily, is our current tank lined? I don't think so. I apologize, I don't know the year of the tank that exists on Chippen Hill now, but I don't believe that it's lined. And we had a analysis done of it a few years ago. Dan's not here to help me out tonight, but Emily's doing a great job. And there were no links at that time. Usually, and I think we'll get more into this when we get into the construction phase, these tanks are all pressure tested prior to being installed.
Concrete is not watertight. I mean, moisture actually moves through concrete even when there's no cracks. And so I would suggest, just because we've built these things in the past that apparently aren't as efficient as they could be, maybe we should think differently as we go forward in the future. Water is a valuable resource. There are many, many places in the world that just don't have the incredible gift we have here. And I think we need to respect that.
Over to Jeremy.
I was just gonna say information that might help clarify. If I remember the requirements of the water supply rule correctly, the requirement for storage is generally independent of the source, and it has to do with average day demand along with several hours of fire flow, which I believe due to the buildings in town is 3,500 gallons per minute. So that's probably, yes, the Palmer Springs has a huge source, but I believe the state just requires that much storage in order to meet both the fire flow and the average day demand, if I remember the water supply rule correct. So yeah, I agree, Palmer Springs I think is like 2,000 gallons a minute. It's a huge source, but I believe a lot of that is driven by the actual requirements of the state of Vermont water supply rule.
But who's paying?
Can you adjust your questions to me, please? Sorry, Charles. Question in the back? Oh, it's you. Sorry, right there.
Amy Sheldon. I guess I have two questions. One is, I'm curious about the footprint on Chipman Hill of the tank, the new tank. And also, we talked a lot about the Cross Street Bridge Fund and the debt service, but I'm curious about the balance for bridge maintenance overall.
So I'll take on the balance of the Cross Street Bridge Fund and the maintenance of the Cross Street Bridge. So after the articles under consideration tonight, there will be $1.5 million remaining in the fund for any maintenance requirements coming up. We're not seeing anything in the maintenance plan of that magnitude in the foreseeable future. We do have like a 20-year maintenance plan for that.
Amy, there was a flyer about the Chipman Hill water storage tank. I'm happy to show you mine when I come back down there. There is a little proposed site plan on the front of that. It's not very big, but the tank is proposed to go within the town's existing property on Chipman Hill, does not require any additional property purchase. It fits into our existing footprint up there. Does that answer your question?
Go ahead, Emily.
They're in the Article 5 slide.
They're in the Article 5
I mean, in the
slide?
Article 8 slide, so that's an image of a similar proposed tank.
Hang on a second.
Sorry.
If I can hear her, then I'll.
Okay, so it's a pre-stressed concrete tank that would be built on location. This is obviously the similar one. But if you go forward one slide, maybe, 2 slides, 3 slides. That is essentially the footprint. It is designed to go where the original reservoir from 1900 is, that turned into a bit of a swimming hole, I believe, over the years. And so it would be on the western portion of that, but it's about 80-foot diameter, 60 feet, somewhere in there in elevation. But it'd be set down slightly. We have done some tree clearing in there, and it's still completely screened, so you really can't see it from the roadway at all at this point. Does that answer your question, Amy? Anyone else? Is it okay in the center?
Tyler Ayers. These two articles, 8 and 5, so there's $1 million and then there's 3.5 million. Is this additive? Is the 1 million, if this passes, is then left 2.5? And then that's the first question. Second question, what happens then if one of these articles passes and the other doesn't?
So we have to bond for the full cost of the project, and this, the $1 million would reduce the amount of a bond when issued.
Another hand over here.
Hang on, just,
So your second question, if the voters don't approve the $1 million
from the cross street fund, but they do approve the bond, then we would be approved to bond the whole amount. If you approve the $1 million but don't approve the bond, then we would most likely not do the project and not take the $1 million out of the cross street fund.
My question is, the wording of Article 5 says that this is being done for the purpose of constructing a water tank for its public drinking water system. It's being assumed to be Middlebury. And what I've always wondered a bit about the relationship between Middlebury and the water system and the water system users in Middlebury proper, if that's the right term, versus East Middlebury, which is also a public water system, and I think that's a bit confusing. And it also raises the question, I know that all of us throughout the legal entity that is the town of Middlebury, both here and in East Middlebury, need a well-stocked fire system to serve the need of the entire community, and we need good water for all of our school children and all of the businesses in Middlebury. That serves all of us. But I'm still sometimes wonder about how the financing actually works. Do we have similar kinds of motions and funding mechanisms to assist East Middlebury when Fire District Number 1 system needs some help? I'm just looking for some kind of clarification, some recognition also that there's more than one public drinking water system within our larger community.
Yes, you are correct.
There are two separate systems. The East Middlebury system, I believe, is called Fire District 1, and does the users of that system fund that system with their rate charges, and similar to the Middlebury, the water system and the water fund and the wastewater fund are separate from the general fund in the town of Middlebury as well. And the majority of the funding for the water comes from the rate users of the system. Does that help?
I think the language in the wording of the article implies a single water system. That's a concern. It's just always been some questions in my mind about the relationship between the two water systems that aren't necessarily answered here, and I would not speak against this article, because as I said, we need to properly have a system that serves all the communities. I'm just wondering if there's similar kinds of situations where you have a municipal need to support the East Middlebury system should such the need arise.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Article 5, is that correct? Heather Seeley introduced Article 5 by telling us that there was something important that we should listen to. And my sense was that you were telling us that, Heather, because there was some implication from the historical item you were describing that might have implications for Article 5. Would you remind me, please, briefly of what you said and if there might be a connection? Thank you.
So what I was wanting to call to your attention was the success that our town staff has had in securing funds for paying for water system improvements that did not come from rate users or the Cross Street Bridge Fund. So just as a reminder, town staff was able to secure 1.36 million in loan forgiveness, 975,000 in non-interest financing, and 600,000 from the Northern Borders Regional Commission Grant Program. Those three funding sources paid for the Court Street and Washington Street repair projects. And as if you'll recall, in 2020, we asked the voters at that time to bond for those projects and to also allocate $1 million from the Cross Street Bridge Fund for those projects. We will not need to bond or take the $1 million because of the grant funding that the town staff was able to secure. So that was the important part. We are hoping that we will have the same success with this project in securing grant funding. So we will not have to use ultimately the money from the Cross Street Bridge. But in order to go forward, we need the voter support and their approval. So if we aren't successful, we do have the money to pay for the project. Does that help, Joe?
For a similar purpose, that we agreed to use $1 million from the Cross Street Bridge Reserve Fund, we in fact did not need to use that money. And we're hopeful that that could happen again,
Yes, that's correct.
but we can't be sure.
That's correct.
But nevertheless, we could vote on it now, if everyone agreed.
Yes.
Thank you.
Charles, I'm going to grant you one last time to talk, but you've had your two.
There's another cost involved in this. One thing, full disclosure, I live on Springside Road, which is your way up the hill, which is more patch than pavement. It's not going to outlast this project. So are we repaving the street? And it's another thing that I seem to be neglected in this town is the repaving in our streets in general. And I'm concerned about that. I would think it would be a yearly process that we repave a street in this town every year, a street or two. And that's not happening. The ones we have paved have been dug up completely. Springside Road is sliding down the hill. You're going to get heavy trucks and everything up there. So it's part of this cost for this water tank repaving Springside Road.
Good question. So I do agree that we have been a little behind in maintaining and keeping our roads in good condition. We have been prioritizing road paving, I would say in last 4 to 5 years. It does take time and it's considerable cost. And as you'll recall earlier in Brian's recap, he mentioned the Katy Road project, the Colonial Drive projects are things we completed this year. I do know that Springside Drive is on our priority list. I can't tell you right off the top of my head when we think we might get to it, but I don't know what that means. 2025. That's where it's on the list right now.
It does not make sense to repave that road before the construction project because it will be hard on it. So we'd like to get it done and then get that road fixed up to where it should be. It is a priority to work on roads, and I don't have it in front of me, but I can try to find it. We have been, if you'll look in the capital budget for road paving, we have been gradually increasing that amount. So some of the 92,000 increase in the capital budget that you approved earlier that's coming from the Cross Street Bridge Fund does include increases in road paving.
Anyone else? If not, are you ready for the question? The motion is on adopting Article 5 as warned. All in favor of adopting Article 5, please say aye. Any opposed? Article 5 is adopted. Moving on to Article 6, shall the voters of the town of Middlebury vote to collect taxes on, thank you, Heather, forgot to thank you, to collect taxes on real property for fiscal year 2023-2024 in 2 equal installments due in the Treasurer's Office on the 15th day of November 2023 and the 15th day of March 2024. What is your pleasure on Article 6? Looking for a motion. Nick Artem makes the motion.
Laura Summerly seconds. Thank you very much. I'm going to invite
Andy Hooper, he's on his way to tell you about Article 6.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Can anyone hear me? And everyone? Perfect. A quick background on municipal finance. The town's property tax bills have 2 components, the local municipal tax and the state education property tax. While tax bills for both components are issued as one bill at the local level, the residential portion of the state educational property tax is income sensitized, and the calculation of the state residential education property tax portion of tax bills relies on a state administered database, which is updated throughout the year, with the vast majority of updates entered by early October. In the past, Middlebury has collected taxes in 3 installments during the July 1st through June 30th fiscal year, with payments due on August 15th, November 15th, and March 15th. With the first installment due on August 15th, the property tax bills must be issued no later than July 15th, 30 days in advance of the due date, which is before all of the information necessary to calculate the state's education tax portion of residential tax bills has been received from the state. Using incomplete or outdated information from the state database, which the town must do to meet the mid-July mailing deadline for an August 15th installment, has resulted in errors on the tax bills, which in turn causes unnecessary stress and confusion for taxpayers and additional work for our finance team to send revised tax bills. Pushing the first installment for payment of property taxes to November 15th would allow the town to receive and process state residential homestead information updates through early October and issue accurate tax bills one time by mid-October for the November 15th first installment. Accordingly, to avoid the pitfalls of the early installment on August 15th, on this year's town meeting warning, the Select Board has proposed the payment of taxes in 2 installments on November 15th and March 15th. For those who prefer paying taxes in 3 or more installments, an early partial payment option is always available by contacting the finance office at the town.
Thank you, Andy. Any questions or discussion on Article 6? There's a hand over here.
The wording on this article implies this is a 1-year change, not ongoing.
We vote on this every year.
There's a hand in the back, in the center.
Lawson, I understand why you want to move the first payment to November 15th, and I would expect that you want the money so that it can be processed well in advance of the end of the fiscal year. is it not feasible? But for many people, not having two payments being 6 months apart is difficult. I appreciate the flexibility that you show with the final item on the screen there about more payments. Is March 15th truly the latest that the second installment could be due?
We have asked the finance department
for alternatives to this, if the two payments and the tight timing of those was thought to be a burden for a large number of residents. And they suggested ways of moving three payments through the year that they could use with the municipal payments that are required. The most spread that they provided was 3 equal payments on November 15th, March 15th, and May 15th. So they're still confined to 6 months of the year on 3.
On May 15th, why did you choose the spread November and March rather than going to two payments, one in November, one in May?
The March 15th was considered the optimal time because that would give us time to follow up on people that are delinquent in their final tax payment, so we could get that cleaned up, or not all of them cleaned up, but the most we could by the end of the fiscal year.
Any other questions or discussion? There's a hand up in the center here.
In 2020, we had this conversation to go from 4 to 3. I'm wondering if there were any adverse effects or unintended consequences then that would inform this.
Can you say your name again? I couldn't quite hear it.
Robin Stadel?
Thank you.
So, good memory. The article was to go from 3 to 2 payments. At that time, we could not clearly articulate our rationale for the change.
Anyone else? In the center?
Promote the 3 payments. The 3 payments just breaks it up a lot nicer versus 2 huge payments, especially when it's in less than 6 months. And the delinquent taxes make up less than 2% of the overall income from taxes. So it just seems like a tail wagging the dog here a little bit. So I just want to advocate for that 3 payment system. I personally, it lessens the burden. Thank you.
This is all the voice of experience. My taxes got done last year, September 5th. Now, if you talk about a mess, I won't tell you what happened. But if it had been this, I wouldn't have been penalized by the state. I wouldn't have had the town redoing my taxes because the education thing wasn't there. I'm 100% for this because what they're arguing is exactly what happened to me. Taxes did not get done in time, and it was a mess. And I don't want to go through it again. I propose we do 15, November, and March.
And your name for the record, please? Your name?
I'm your neighbor, Susan.
I
Dave
know, you have
Wakefield.
to say it. Dave Wakefield. Anyone else? Are you ready for the question?
Okay. So the motion is on adopting Article 6 as warned. All in favor of adopting Article 6, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. The ayes have it. Article 6 is adopted. Article 7 is to transact other business proper to be done. We have a lot going on in this article, but there is no voting during this article. There is just discussion about things in the room. So we're not going to be acting on anything. First up, in other business, we are going to talk about Article 8. Select Board Member Heather Seeley is going to come up and talk to us about the water bond, and that will be voted on tomorrow.
It's deja vu. Article 8. The board is requesting your support on an Australian vote to bond for the cost to build a 1.5 million gallon concrete tank on Chipman Hill adjacent to our existing storage tank. The construction proposal includes tree planting to provide bank stabilization, screening, and increased natural habitat. Our existing tank is undersized and does not provide the necessary storage volumes for average daily demand and fire flows. The additional tank, which is required to remain in compliance with the town's state permit to operate the water system, will provide sufficient peak hourly demand, provide 350,000 gallons per minute fire flow demand, stabilize water pressure, enable the town to maintain service during repairs. Town staff is working to identify potential grant funding, low interest rate financing, and/or loan forgiveness programs that could offset or eliminate the need to bond for the $3.5 million estimated cost of the project. Similarly, as we mentioned a short time ago, to the Court and Washington Street projects. To qualify for these programs, the town must show community and voter support for the project. A successful bond vote demonstrates and confirms community and voter support. The estimated costs are $62,000 for engineering. This part of the project is funded through the Water Capital Improvement Fund. And then, as I mentioned, the estimated construction costs of $3.5 million. Our funding options, as mentioned, were the Capital Improvement Fund, a water rate increase, the Cross Street Bridge Fund Reserve, which we talked about in Article 5, the State Revolving Loan Fund / grant, which also requires a bond vote. The board is requesting your support for Article 8 at the polls tomorrow, Tuesday, March 7th. Our goal with the help of town staff is to reduce the cost to residents and water system users.
Any questions for Heather or discussion? Over here. What happened to our microphones? It's a coming. Can you speak up, Alice?
I'll talk really loud.
Alice Evans.
There you go, thank you.
Town state permit, so this is required for the town state permit. What if we don't do it? What are the consequences with that? Are they gonna take our water away? I don't know, I just was, since it's to meet a requirement, what happens if we don't meet the requirement? That's my question.
The state permits all public drinking water systems. Emily, do you want to add to that?
Microphone's coming, Emily.
I don't know what happens.
They would be able to revoke our permit, we would not be able to just distribute water through the system. So the permit would be revoked and the water system would not be able to operate, correct? That's what she said.
Bruce Meacham. Is this tank going to replace the existing, or is the existing going to stay as well?
The existing tank is going to stay as well.
So
This is an additional storage tank on Chipman Hill.
If my mind serves me right, the current one's 1 million gallons? The current is 1.5 million? How much water a day does the town use?
Is Bill still here?
1.2. 1.2 is the answer.
So it almost cycles once a day right now.
Thank you, Emily.
Other questions?
Okay. Oh, wait, there's a question over here. You are not a Middlebury resident, correct? Oh, okay. You're sitting in the non-resident section. Sorry. You're fine. We've just identified you now. Go ahead.
My name is James Hand.
What was the last name?
Hand.
Thank you, James.
So some questions relating to the college. Is the college on the town water system?
Yes.
And so I guess I'm curious if you could talk about how the college's share of this storage tank would be different based on whether the funding, most of the funding came through water rate increases versus other funding sources.
So all of the users on the system
Pay for water. There's a combination. The water rate you pay is a combination. There's a base rate and then there's a usage rate. And all users pay the same, I believe, base rate, and then your usage rate goes on how much water you use. If we're able to secure funding for the entire project, then we don't need to increase the rates for any of the users of the system. If we aren't able to secure all of or some of the funding, we will have to raise rates, and that would be consistent across all of the users of the system. Does that answer?
I mean, I get the water rate increase scenario.
Can you speak louder?
Yeah, so if the funding if the rates are not increased and the funding comes from, say, the Cross Street Bridge Fund Reserve, my understanding is most of that comes from property taxes or the local option tax. So does that mean that town residents are paying a greater share as opposed to, say, the college in that scenario?
So we are only proposing to take
Up to $1 million of the Cross Street Bridge Fund to fund this project. And that money comes from the local option tax, the extra 1% on the sales tax, and rooms and meals. So anyone purchasing anything in the town of Middlebury or eating in the town of Middlebury is contributing to that fund. And it is a way to spread the cost. So we all go out to eat in the town of Middlebury, right? And we're using water at those places, but we aren't necessarily a ratepayer. But when we purchase that meal, we pay a little extra on rooms and meals, so it helps offset the cost of having water in those places, even though we aren't necessarily maybe a ratepayer in the system. Does that make a little more sense?
Anyone else? We're not acting on this article today. It'll be voted on tomorrow. So let's move on to Article 9. And I'm inviting up Select Board Member Dan Brown. He's in the wings, coming in.
Well, Article 9 should be a little bit easier. It has nothing to do with water or taxes or roads or gas stations. So this is about a charter amendment. Over the past many years, we've been very fortunate in that we've had a very competent and honest individuals who've been elected to be the town treasurer. And as you know, the last election was Jackie Sullivan, who had to retire and is currently being filled in by Beth Dow, who has tried to retire and has had to step up for this. So the select board is recommending that we change the charter so that the treasurer would be appointed by the select board. We feel a fiduciary responsibility to ask you voters for this charter to allow the appointment rather than election for this position. We hope that you will support this change, and we think it's essential for our responsible financial operations and good governance. And are there any questions? The process too. The select board has approved this. We have to vote this in the town meeting, and then this has to be approved by the state legislature because it is a charter change.
Any questions? I see a hand over here in the middle.
Way that it's better or worse?
Yeah, I sure can. The town treasurer is actually a 5-hour a week job, and as it's set up now, the treasurer is elected by the voters and doesn't work on the staff, and this way she or he would be working on a staff. But more importantly, it gives us the option to select this person. And with that selection process, we can interview them, and we can do background checks, and we can determine that we get the proper person. With the election process, we get what gets voted in. So we think it's a much safer and much more fiduciarily responsible for us to do that.
Anyone else? Oh, sorry. In the back.
Dan, what does the town treasurer do? Well, basically, to make it real simple, the town treasurer basically takes charge of the checkbook. The funds going in and out of our bank accounts,
they are the ones who, I believe they sign the checks, and they're the ones that balance the checkbooks. And right now, it has been, and Jackie had this. She worked 5 hours a week as a town treasurer, and she worked the rest of her time in the department handling the finances.
Anything else? There's another hand.
So are you saying that because she happened to have a job in excess of her 5 hours, which was as an elected official for 5 hours, and then she did additional work for the town, are you envisioning this being a position that is more than 5 hours? It covers, I'm still...
The position as a town treasurer.
It takes about 5 hours a week. Obviously, we could hire somebody to come in and just do that job for 5 hours a week. But I think Kathleen has found it much more efficient to have the town treasurer work for the 5 hours, and the rest of the time be an employee in the town, to be one of the 3 staff members in the finance office.
A portion of a person's overall job with the town.
Correct. That's what and to do that, we have to do a charter change.
I'm a little concerned about the idea that if it's an elected position, it's not as trustworthy.
I'm not saying that, but as an elected position, we as a select board and don't have an option of who becomes the town treasurer, which is a pretty important job.
Yes, and the voters have that choice.
Yes, they do.
No further questions.
We've been, and like I said, we've been very fortunate in the elected positions that we have as the town treasurer and our town clerk. So that hasn't been a problem.
Is there somebody over here? No? Okay, then back over here. Gary, did you have a hand up?
Yes, I did.
Yes, you did.
Oh, like Gary first?
I didn't see you, but you're right there. Go ahead. Sorry, Gary. You're next. Go ahead.
George Cloak here. I'm just wondering if the select board has researched how other towns do this in Vermont. I mean, there must be many examples of doing different ways.
As I've been reading in Vermont Digger, there are 20 towns this year that are doing exactly what we're doing with 30 different positions throughout the state, and that's the same number that was done last year. So there's and so there seems to be this happening quite a bit in the state.
Go ahead, Gary.
It's my understanding that you cannot do a criminal background check on an elected official.
That is correct, yes.
Okay, just wanted to say it plainer. We all know many towns have had thousands, hundreds of thousands stolen from them by financial people. So I think that says it all.
Well, we as a select board think this is essential for responsible financial operations and good governance. And we've obviously supported to put this this article on.
Anyone else? Great. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Article 10 is voted on tomorrow. It's the election of officers, and traditionally we allow candidates that are running for different offices to say a few words here, and I was going to invite residents who are running for office to speak first, and then I know we have a couple who are residents of different towns who are also running for ACSD board who are here, but anyone in the residents would like to speak? Put your hand up. Can we have some microphones in the front, please?
Hi, everyone. Again, my name is Isabel Goverty, and I live on North Pleasant Street. I first want to say thank you all for coming out today and being a part of this really important civic duty that has such a rich history here in the state of Vermont. I also want to thank everyone who introduced themselves, introduced their family, introduced their business, or just lended a hand to me as I was appointed to the select board in August, and I've learned so much over the last few months of being appointed to this position. By day, I serve the Middlebury community by being the health teacher at the middle school. Every other Tuesday, I serve the Middlebury community by representing a demographic of people who traditionally don't see themselves in local politics. And I was inspired by Esther, another young person, to put my name in the hat for this position, and I hope to run for it again. If there's anything I've learned about teaching middle schoolers to be their most physically well, most mentally well, and most civically well individuals, it's how important a sense of belonging is to all people. And I hope that in my time on the select board, and if you elect me again tomorrow, that we can increase the amount of sense of belonging that people feel in our community, right? I think about our little small ones, childcare opportunities, and their sense of belonging in that growing community. I think about the students that I see every single day, and their ability and their need for after school and summer programs. And I think about all of us in the building tonight who would really benefit from some more third places outside of our role as professionals, places outside of our role as parents, and outside of our role as partners to fit into this greater community here in Middlebury. So thank you all again for coming out tonight. I would love to see you at the polls tomorrow. I'll be there on my lunch break and after school. And I highly encourage you all tomorrow to vote anytime from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. But I task you all with bringing along a young person with you. Bring along a young person who has never seen a poll before. Talk to them about why it's important to vote, and if you feel comfortable doing so, who you're voting for and why you're voting for them. It's really important to get young people civically engaged, and it's been a dream to do my day job teaching our middle schoolers and also serve on this board as well. So thank you.
Anyone else who's running for this candidate would like to speak?
That was a mic drop. I had it, I'm Dan Brown, and I'm running for re-election. And I just want to say, I had a 20-minute conversation with Izzy when she volunteered to run or be appointed to the select board. And now I think you see why we've asked her to be on the select board. She's exciting, and she gets what this is all about. So I'm just recommending everybody go vote tomorrow, and hopefully when you're there, you'll vote for me. I'm running unopposed, and my fear is that I might not win the election. So please use your vote.
And I'm Brian Carpenter. I've decided to run one more time, and I would appreciate your support. I think we still have some really important things to accomplish in the community. We're underway on some of these. Support for more housing opportunity, more daycare opportunities, and so I just feel like we have some unfinished business, and so I'd like to have your support to stay. I'm running unopposed too, which disappoints me because when you see the quality of candidates that we get in, like Isabel, it's really exciting, and we need more young people to start getting involved. And this will be my last term, so I don't want to run again. But we need people to actually step forward and run. And I'll give you another example: is our town clerk position, and this is something we're struggling with, is to get people to step forward and run for office. So thank you.
Anybody else from the resident side? So who, hands up? Oh, there is somebody over here? Who are over in residence? Okay, so hang on, we'll be with you guys in the non-resident section in a minute. So don't forget your name.
Middlebury slots. I work as a dairy nutritionist in the area, and my husband works at Mums and has worked at Mary Hogan, Bridport, and Shoreham schools. I've seen kind of firsthand some of his frustrations in the past couple of years working at Mums, and I think it's really important to have a candidate who has kind of an ear to the teachers in the community, as well as the students. My son goes to Mary Hogan. Now he's in 3rd grade. I think of myself as a problem solver. I think of myself as a collaborator. I want to work with the community and with the current school board to help make sure that we have the best environment that we can for our kids, to make sure that everybody in the community feels heard, and to make sure that we can be the best we can be. So I hope you'll consider voting for me tomorrow.
My name is Steve Orlick. I am not running today, but I think it is important to hear the perspective of a currently sitting ACSD board member. This is a critical election for us, mostly because we are being inundated with media messages from a certain group that is funded almost exclusively by the surrounding towns, and I'm speaking of the Save Our Schools movement. They have already inserted a number of school board members, which has been a difficult situation. 3 people that SOS is supporting are currently running, and they are not being transparent. They are not identifying themselves as supporters of SOS. So in the interest of transparency, I would like you to know that SOS is currently supporting Hildy Stone, Ron Matliff, and Chris Kramer. And please, take that information under consideration when you make your votes tomorrow.
Anyone else from the residents? There's a hand up here.
Question, what is SOS?
The question is,
What is SOS?
SOS.
Save Our Schools.
Save Our Schools.
Save Our Schools is the answer.
Thank you.
Sure. So hands up over here, who would like to, so we have 2 people that would like to speak. Are there any objections to these 2 candidates speaking?
Sorry.
Hearing no objections, why don't we start in the front here?
Hello, my name is Ellen Wheelan-Wiest. I'm a resident in Cornwall. I am running for the open Cornwall seat. I was appointed to fill in for Peter Conlon a few weeks ago on the board, so I've had just a few weeks of getting a little bit more familiar with how the school board operates, certainly with all the challenges that are facing our district, and with a lot of you in the room and people across our communities. It's been really exciting to be able to get both sides of that perspective. I'm running as a candidate. I work in public policy on criminal justice reform, but a lot of that work I think would apply to what's facing the school board because it involves using data and collaboration and conversation on really challenging issues that have people who have typically been on opposite sides of those issues and trying to find narrow, tangible areas of consensus to try to find real solutions together. So that's really what I would bring to the school board, as well as a lot of involvement in our communities, being on various boards like Women's Safe and the soon-to-open Red Clover Children's Center, which will be a new child care center in town, and the Cornwall Development Review Board. So I'll be here afterwards if anyone has any questions. Thank you so much for your time.
In the back, it's been very patient, thank you.
Hi, I am Chris Kramer, and I'm running from Cornwall as well. Just to Steve's comment, I just want to make one clarification, which is I'm actually not backed by Save Our Schools. Save Our Schools is not backing a candidate in Cornwall, just so you know, which is fine. I understand the misunderstanding because I was actually Save Our Schools officer for several months from about the fall till this, till about a month ago. So I certainly have been affiliated with SOS, but just to be clear, for their sake, they are actually not taking a position in Cornwall. We actually had a long discussion of that within SOS, and to give Ellen some credit, I think we have certain positions that are similar, and so SOS just decided not to take a position there.
Can you make sure you speak into the microphone?
Oh, am I not? I'm sorry, I can't tell.
Okay.
What, did people hear what I?
You just at the end there.
Okay, I'll assume it was heard well enough, but okay, great. As far as why I am running, I will say I do have a lot of support, on the other hand, from Cornwall school parents. I've been the co-chair of Friends of Cornwall School for about 4 years, all through the pandemic. We had to figure out how to take some of our traditional activities and turn them into morale boosting events that we could actually go forward with during those couple of years that we weren't able to actually be present in the school. It was really important to us to provide that support to the community. As far as Save Our Schools and that kind of thing, I want to be clear, I am a supporter of our small town schools. I'd rather get up here and say that in Middlebury, which is a little scary, than not say that. It's who I am, it's what I believe, and for me it's okay to run on what you believe, and I understand there are different opinions on that issue. I understand why, that's just where I come out. Lastly, I think the last thing I want to say is that regardless of the town district issue, there are other issues in our district that need real attention, and they're going to be difficult. The reason that they're going to be difficult is that a couple of the most important issues that I think we have to address are things that we've already made decisions on, and so they've already actually been implemented. I'm talking about the International Baccalaureate program, for those of you who are familiar. If you're not, it's the curriculum that's driving our schools these days. My kids do pretty well with it. I think there's some great parts of it. It's about global citizenship and that kind of thing. But there's been a lot of discussion about it not working as well for students who have different learning profiles, students who need special education, things like that. It's already in our schools. So having a discussion about adjusting that is going to take a real voice. It's going to take real work. It's going to be difficult. And I'm ready and willing to go make sure that discussion happens. The other one that you guys are probably aware of.
Chris?
Oh, excuse me.
Good.
All time?
It's
Okay.
a little bit of time.
I'll just wrap it up and say Mums is a similar situation, and I'm willing to have that discussion as well. So thanks for your consideration.
And we also had, is there anybody else over here? I don't think so. Anne would like to say something too. We have, just to give you a heads up on what's coming up, Laura's going to be speaking about the town meeting poll, and then there's going to be an update from the IPL project team, and then an update from Maple Broadband. So there's a few more things, but just wanted to let Anne speak first. Thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Ann Webster. I am town clerk in Middlebury, and I am on the ballot.
Tomorrow, so I didn't want that to be surprising to anyone who has not voted yet. I'm desperately trying to retire, and so I'm working with the select board in a way that I'm on the ballot. I will continue to be town clerk at least until the end of the fiscal year. Here I'm available. And so what I'm really hoping for is that the right person definitely steps forward so that I can step down, and that together that new person and I can make it a smoother transition. As I say, I love you all, but I really would love to retire.
Is there anyone else who is just getting shy? All right. Laura, would you like to talk about the town meeting poll?
Yes, so once again, don't go yet. I know you gotta go, but don't go yet. Speaking of gotta go, on the town poll, we're looking for your feedback about where you could go if you gotta go. So we're looking at a public bathroom, a standalone public bathroom project that is like somewhere between an upgraded portalette. And it looks like this. So it's got a very small footprint. There's one of these in Burlington. It's called the Portland Loo because it came from Portland, the design, and it's specially designed for downtowns to be a plumbed standalone bathroom. The advantage of this is that it has space for you to bring your bike, your backpack, your child's cart, so it can accommodate space, and it's plumbed with water. So the Rotary is willing to donate this, but is looking for our willingness to support the maintenance cost of this. So roughly that would be about $1.25 per $100,000 of property value. So you can do the math from there. And it could be less. It could be less than that, depending on how it's positioned. So that's the concept. And also on the town poll, if you're new to Middlebury, you can let us know if you want to be on our email list, and you can let us know if you'd like to be on one of our committees. And you can also get a sense of what we have at our town website to keep you informed. So please look for the town poll. You could do it in print at the polls. You could take a copy here tonight home with you, or you could do it online. There's a SurveyMonkey link that was in the town listserv today and will repeat again. And you have until March 17th to complete the poll. So again, it's your opportunity to give us some feedback on this project and anything else that might be on your mind, including how we conduct town meeting. Oh, here's the town website. So you can see if you click on for residents, you'll see the information about town meeting that we were just looking at tonight. And if you click on, I think it's from here, you can you can get to a So how do I, common questions and answers about assessing town services. So you can get to that from our town website under, right at the top, how do I? So if you click on how do I, very, very good place to visit. I recommend visiting the town of Middlebury and looking at that page. It's a treasure trove of shortcuts of everything that you need to know about town government. And you can see this is what you can get at your town website, townofmiddlebury.org website. So don't miss it.
Thank you, Laura. So I was going to invite Dana Hart, our library director, and Joe McVeigh, the president of the library board, to give an update from the IPL project team.
Kathleen's going to load up a few slides for us here. Hi, I'm Joe McVeigh. I am the president of the Ilsley Public Library Board of Trustees and a member of the Ilsley 100 project team, which is the group that's been tasked by the select board to look at the future of Ilsley Public Library. If you were to look above the main entrance to the library, you would notice that a year is inscribed. Can anybody tell me what that year is? 1927.
24. 27,
I heard earlier.
23.
If you look closely at the slide on the screen, it would tell you that it is in fact 1923 is the year that's inscribed. And that's when construction began on the library. And it was finished in 1924. So that means that our original library building is how old? Just about 100 years, pretty close to 100 years old. And any of you who have lived in older houses are aware that over the course of time, despite the best construction, from time to time, you need to fix some things up. And we are in desperate need of fixing some things up at the library. And so to help us think about that, your elected library trustees have developed a vision for what we hope that our library building will become: a welcoming, accessible, and safe community hub with the flexibility and sustainability to enrich community members' lives now and into the future. So to help us fulfill that vision, over the course of the last year, the Ilsley 100 project team has researched best practices in library design. We visited recently built or renovated libraries around the state. And we do think that broadband is very important, and we're certainly supportive of broadband. Which is something that we saw when we visited some of the rebuilt or renovated libraries around the state. So we also have thought very carefully and we analyzed the amount of space that we need, to house our collection of materials, the amount of space that the staff needs to function effectively, and the amount of space required for the many types of programming that the library provides. So the project team, good. I'm just thrilled that the cost of the new library is going to be $635,000 instead of the 14.8 million that is the number we'd come up with. Yeah. So anyway, so we looked at space issues, and we examined several options for how best to accomplish the vision. And after quite a comprehensive process, we came to the conclusion that we want to keep the original 1924 library building. And we want to renovate it and expand it to meet the needs of the town for the next 100 years. Yay. Right. Okay, so excellent. So here you can see the excellent ILSI 100 project team full of eminent members of the town. And if we move on to the next slide, you'll see the fabulous vision and charter that we have for the Library of the Future to be, welcoming accessible, safe community hub with flexibility and sustainability to enrich community members' lives now and into the future. And on the next slide, you can see the process that we've gone through over the last year or so. And what we concluded on the next slide is that we want to renovate and expand the library to meet the needs of the town. So we're very grateful for those of you who attended our open meetings and offered feedback on the different options that we were considering. That had a significant impact on our recommendations to the select board, and we thank the select board for endorsing our decision. So what are we doing now? At present, we are looking at qualifications of interested architecture and design firms who might want to work with us moving forward. On Wednesday, we'll be giving a tour of the building to representatives of a number of those firms. We had 14 of them attend an online information session last Friday. So we anticipate that in April, we will narrow the field of interested companies to 3 or 4, at which point we will invite them to take a couple of months to come up with some ideas, conceptual ideas for what sort of a design would best fulfill the vision that we have on that current site. And based in part on those submissions, we'll choose one firm to collaborate with us on a new design. We don't know what it's going to look like yet, but we hope that we'll be able to start on that over the summer, and community feedback will continue to be a critical part of our work going forward. So we're really proceeding on 3 fronts simultaneously. One is the design front. One is working with you, the public, to make sure that you're engaged and well informed about what we're doing and have opportunities for input. And then there's the matter of how we're going to pay for this. We've had the cost of this project analyzed. We estimate it would cost roughly $14.8 million. So we're presently looking into ways to fund it. Possible sources of funding include federal and state appropriations, various grants, a private fundraising campaign, and municipal financing that would come from you in the form of a bond. So we're going to do everything that we can to make this project come to fruition in a way that's affordable for the town. But if any of you have leads on promising funding sources or have a rich uncle with philanthropic leanings who loves libraries, please get in touch. So we invite your continued participation in the process by attending any of our meetings or by reading the minutes of those meetings, by reading Jim Gish's blog updates, Dana Hart's monthly director's newsletter, articles in the Addison Independent, our social media postings on Facebook and Instagram, and you can follow everything that's happening on the library's website. We're doing all we can to keep you informed about the process, but we'd really like to know what you think as early on in the process as possible, rather than having you arrive at the last minute when it might be too late to make big changes and then asking why you were not consulted. So we're very excited to be at the point that we are now in the process. We hope we can build a library that is really worthy of the town of Middlebury to meet our community's needs, not just for today, but for the future. We're going to have an informational table set up tomorrow outside the polls at the rec center, and we invite any of you who would like to learn more about the project or would like to share your thoughts and ideas to stop by on your way in or out of voting. So the library is there for you. It's there for your children. It's there for everyone. We might live in a small town, but our town library is our key to the world, and we encourage you all to take advantage of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Wanted to invite Ross Conrad up to talk about the Maple Broadband. We do have your presentation ready for you, Ross.
Feel late. Good evening. Ross Conrad. I am currently serving as the delegate representing Middlebury on the governing board of Maple Broadband, and Hugh McLaughlin is the alternate. And I think if I hit that button, there we go. So we're basically community owned and operated. Maple Broadband is owned by the 20 member towns of Addison County. We're a communications union district, kind of like the fire district, school district, only we do not function on any tax money. And we're a nonprofit, and our focus is high-speed fiber internet broadband for everybody in the county and everybody in our town. Quickly, I promise I won't take more than 5 minutes. Just going to run over the funding, construction service launch, our goals coming up, and some of our challenges that we're facing. So as you can see, the majority of all our funds to date have come from grants, and those grants have limitations on how we can use the funds. We're having to only build out the fiber internet broadband infrastructure in places where there are people who are not served or underserved. That means we're kind of right now, it's not very efficient, but we have to do it. We're building out, and it's like Swiss cheese. We're leaving large areas undone because those are the areas that are currently served. And we can't, even though our crews are there, we can't bring our line in there. So once we get that done, our goal is, and hopefully the way we figured it out, once we've got about 1,000 customers on our network, we should have the cash flow to be able to go to the bond market and borrow money to that, which doesn't come with these strings attached, and we can go back and fill in the holes that we have missed. So the other part of our funds is also coming from ARPA contributions from member towns. So basically, one of the great things that has happened recently is that the Vermont Community Broadband Board has offered to match any funds that towns contribute. We figure we're probably going to need about another 15 million at least to finish out the entire Addison County wired with fiber optic cable. We're doing the expensive work. The current cable providers and internet providers are not going to build out down that last mile or two to reach one or two houses down the end of the road. It's just not financially viable for them. They're not ever going to do it. We are committed to doing that so everybody in our town and in Addison County has equal opportunity to have good quality, fast, reliable internet access. And so one of the most important, actually in some cases, in sense, most important part of the funding is the ARPA fund donations, because there's no strings attached, and we can use those for things that we can't use grant money for. We broke ground on construction this end of last year. We built about 25 miles so far, and we did hit a corner of Middlebury out on the way at the end of South Street Extension, Morse Road area. As we were going through Cornwall, we were able to do that because that's an area that was unserved or underserved. Basically, we are rolling. We're looking to put in about another 100 miles coming up next year. We've pre-purchased most all the materials we need. And then once we've doing that, we're also going to be working on phase 2, which will include a significant portion of Middlebury, most probably west of the Otter Creek initially, and then phase 3 will probably get the rest of Middlebury. And so just so you know, the reality is it's going to take time. One of the big challenges we're facing is not only getting materials, but getting help. Basically every town, every county in the state is working on building out their broadband at the same time, and every state in the country is trying to build out their broadband. So as you can imagine, there's a, a lot of competition for finding crews that have the skills to do this work, getting the materials, and we're working on it. Basically, we got incredible folks that are volunteering from the towns and putting in a lot of time. Although we did have to, once we went live, we did end up hiring our first. We have one employee, an executive director, to help really manage things on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour kind of basis. And so let's see here. So I think I've covered pretty much all this. One thing I do want to say is just how much we appreciate the Middlebury Select Board. As we understand, they're seriously considering contributing a small portion of the Middlebury ARPA funds to help build out this network, which is really our network. We all own it collectively. And so if there's any questions, I'm happy to take them, but otherwise, we've been here a long night, so thank you all.
The question is there any other business to bring before the meeting? There's a hand in the back. Microphone coming at you.
Thanks, Susan. I just want to say really quickly, my name is Ruth Hardy. I'm one of your state senators. I'm also an East Middlebury resident. Many other town meetings stop their meetings when legislators come and let legislators give an update. I realize that's not the tradition in Middlebury, but since there are still people here, I just wanted to give a quick update. I'll just take a couple minutes. Is that all right, Madam
You go right ahead. It's any other business before the group.
Thank you. So I serve all of Addison County and also Guilsborough, Huntington, and now Rochester. But Middlebury is, of course, my biggest town and my hometown, so it's nice to see all of you. I have with me these comic books or whatever they're called, graphic novels, thank you, called Freedom and Unity. Izzy, you can have all my extras. And they are awesome about what is government in Vermont. And I highly recommend them if you have kids or students or you just want one yourself. And I have a whole bunch of them if anyone wants them. And I serve on two committees, the Health and Welfare Committee in the morning and the Government Operations Committee in the afternoon. The Health and Welfare Committee, the two big bills we've done this year so far are one bill about protected health care that protects both patients and medical providers who are providing abortion care or gender affirming care to people in our state. And this is because of things that are happening in other states where those two types of health care are being criminalized. The second big bill that we're working on is a child care bill, and I am the primary sponsor of that bill, and that is to expand access to child care and affordability of child care in our state, and also to pay child care providers themselves more so that they can earn a living taking care of all of our children. My afternoon committee is the Government Operations Committee, and we do things like how do we make meetings like this accessible to the public? The first bill we passed this year and last year was about open meetings during COVID that allowed meetings to be, including town meeting, to be hybrid meetings. I've been to a couple town meetings tonight that have been hybrid meetings, and that is thanks to the work of the Government Operations Committee. The Government Operations Committee also created CUDs so a few years back, and we also approved town charter changes. So if the voters tomorrow approve Article 9 to change the Middlebury Town Charter, then one of your representatives, Amy Sheldon or Robin Scheid, will introduce that bill in the House. It will pass in the House and it will come over to the Senate and the Government Operations Committee, and we will review the Middlebury Town Charter, including all the other town charters. And to answer the question that happened, there are many, many, many towns that are looking at making positions like their town treasurers into appointing positions, especially really little towns because they can't find people in their little towns to do those positions. So it's pretty normal for that. And we also are doing a bill that will directly impact, hopefully positively, the town of Middlebury, which is about emergency communications and dispatch.
We heard an emergency first responder have to leave our meeting. He was literally being dispatched to a fire or some kind of emergency event. And the dispatch services in the state of Vermont have been kind of a mess for my entire life. The first statewide report on dispatch services was issued in 1970, and it hasn't gotten any better since. And the county, Addison County, and particularly the town of Middlebury, is really difficult when it comes to dispatch services because so many different little entities dispatch all of our first responders. So we're trying to do a bill to make a statewide oversight similar to what we did with broadband, actually. So hopefully we'll see some improvements there. I'm happy to talk to you about any of the bills you may have heard of, the Affordable Heat Act, the housing bills, any of the healthcare bills, the town budget. I can hang around, you can get a comic book, and we can chat government if you want. Thanks for coming to town meeting. Great job, everyone. Good night.
Anyone else?
If not, I'd welcome and entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved. Is there a second? Well, Isabel got you on that one. All in favor, please say aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.